When I was 16, I lived with my dad in a quiet suburb outside Eugene, Oregon. It was just the two of us after my mom passed away when I was 10. We lived in a single-story ranch-style house, tucked away on a dead-end street, surrounded by thick, overgrown woods. The kind of place where the nights were pitch black and silence felt heavier than it should. My dad worked nights at a warehouse about 40 minutes away, so most evenings I had the place to myself. He trusted me. I got good grades, didn't cause trouble, and we had a big golden retriever named Scout who barked at his own shadow, so it never felt unsafe being home alone. Not really. That changed one fall evening. It was late October, just a week before Halloween. I remember because we had a carved pumpkin out on the front porch and orange string lights lining the windows. The air had that cold bite to it, and the trees out back were nearly bare. I had finished my homework early and was watching the thing on TV, bundled up in a hoodie, with Scout laying beside the couch. Around 9:30 p.m., I paused the movie to grab a soda from the kitchen. That's when I noticed something strange. Scout, who had been snoring a moment ago, was suddenly wide awake, ears perked, head up, eyes fixed on the back sliding glass door. I looked outside. It was pitch black. The porch light flickered slightly, casting a dull glow over the deck and yard. Probably a raccoon, I muttered. But Scout didn't growl. He didn't bark. He just stared. That's when I noticed it. Movement, just beyond the fence. We had a 6-foot wooden privacy fence that wrapped around the backyard. And for a split second, I saw a shadow, tall, thin, slide past one of the slats. It was so fast I almost convinced myself it was my imagination. Almost. I stood frozen, soda, can in hand, staring into the dark. I waited. Nothing. Then I flipped the porch light on. The yard lit up, but no one was there. The gate was still locked from the inside. No footprints in the patch of dirt near the steps. Just stillness and the sound of wind rustling the branches. Scout had followed me to the door and was now growling, low, like he was trying to warn me, without making too much noise. I closed the curtain and locked the door. Back in the living room, I tried to shake the feeling. Told myself it was just my mind playing tricks. I didn't even unpause the movie. I just stared at the dark TV screen, thinking about what I'd seen. At 10:15, the doorbell rang. We didn't get visitors late at night. Ever. Especially not on a weeknight. I stood up slowly and peered through the peephole. No one was on the porch. But the porch light was still on. The pumpkin was still sitting there. Everything looked normal. I waited. Still nothing. I checked the side window, carefully parting the blinds. That's when I saw him. A man was standing at the corner of our fence, near the far edge of the yard, just on the other side. I could barely make him out through the trees, but he wasn't moving, just standing completely still, facing the house. He was tall, wearing a dark hoodie and jeans. I couldn't see his face. His head was angled down. A chill went through me like ice in my bones. I ducked, heart racing, and crawled back to the living room. Scout was whining now, pacing by the door. I reached for my phone. I called my dad first. He didn't answer, probably mid-shift. Then I called 911. I explained what I saw, that someone was lurking near my fence, that I was home alone. The dispatcher was calm, told me to stay inside, lock all the doors, and wait for officers to arrive. I did exactly that. All lights off. I turned off the TV, sat on the floor with Scout, trying to listen. Every creak of the house made me jump. That's when the tapping started. It came from a side window. Tap, tap, tap. I held my breath. Scout was growling low again, head turned toward the noise. I army crawled toward the hallway and slipped into my dad's room. Locked the door. I had no idea if the man had moved or was still at the fence. But the tapping continued for a few more minutes, then stopped. Then silence. The police arrived about 12 minutes later. Longest 12 minutes of my life. When they knocked on the front door, I didn't answer until they shouted their names and badge numbers through the door. I let them in, 2 officers. One older, one younger. I told them everything. They checked the entire yard, walked the perimeter, even went into the woods behind the house. They found nothing. No footprints. No broken branches. No signs anyone had been there. They left about an hour later, said they'd increase patrols, and told me to call again if anything else happened. But that wasn't the end of it. The next night, everything was quiet. Dad was back home. I told him the whole story, and he took it seriously. He even went out and bought a motion sensor light and one of those little security cams you stick in a window. 2 nights later, we caught him. It was just after midnight. I was asleep, but Scout woke me up, barking like crazy. My dad was already up. The motion light in the backyard had triggered. He grabbed a flashlight, and I followed behind, half awake and scared. We went out the back door and scanned the yard. Nothing. But when we checked the camera footage the next morning, we both went cold. At 11:47 p.m., a man had walked along the back fence, just like I'd seen the first time. He didn't stop, didn't try to get in. He just walked, slowly, hands in his hoodie, face turned away from the camera. He moved with this weird, gliding motion, like he wasn't in a hurry, just watching. The scariest part? He paused right at the fence's edge and looked directly at the house for nearly a full minute, then turned and disappeared into the woods. We turned the footage over to the police. They took it seriously, so they'd seen a few reports of similar incidents in the area. People lurking near fences, standing just outside the view of cameras, vanishing into trees. But no one had caught them. No one ever saw a face. No one ever got hurt. Yet, a week later, my dad installed a full home security system. Cameras on every corner, floodlights, new locks, and then it just stopped. No more sightings, no more tapping, no more motion lights. But sometimes late at night, when it's quiet and I'm walking Scout by the edge of the woods, I still feel like someone's out there, just past the trees, watching, waiting. Back in 2019, I was living in a small upstairs studio apartment on the edge of a quiet town in Pennsylvania. The building sat on the end of a cul-de-sac, right up against a patch of forest that stretched several miles. The area was peaceful, cheap, and mostly occupied by elderly people or young couples. I had just moved there after graduating college, working remotely for a graphic design company, and honestly, I liked the solitude. The apartment had one main window that looked out onto the woods. During the day, the view was calming. You could see deer passing through, and birds constantly flew past. But at night, it became this endless black wall of trees. The street lamp didn't quite reach that far, so all you could see was your own reflection in the window unless the moon was out. One night, I was up late working on a project. It was a Thursday, sometime after midnight. I had my headphones on and was glued to my screen when I got this weird feeling. Not panic exactly, more like a slow creep under my skin, like being watched. I paused my music and took off the headphones. Scout, my cat, was perched on the windowsill. He was completely still, not asleep, just staring. Not at me, but at the window. At first, I thought maybe he saw a raccoon or an owl. But when I walked over, my stomach dropped. There was a face. A man's face was pressed up against the glass, just inches from mine. It was smeared slightly, like he had been leaning there a while. His eyes were wide, bloodshot, skin pale. His hair looked wet or matted. And for a split second, I locked eyes with him. He didn't blink. I stumbled backward, knocking over a lamp. The crash scared Scout, who bolted under the couch. My heart was slamming against my ribs. I grabbed my phone, backed away from the window, and ran into the bathroom, where I locked the door and called 911. The dispatcher was calm, asked me questions while staying on the line. I could barely speak. I told her there was a man standing outside my second-story window, and she asked if I could describe him. I said no, because I hadn't seen him move. At all. He just stared. Eventually, I heard sirens in the distance. A few minutes later, flashing red and blue lights spilled into my apartment. I peeked out the bathroom window. An officer was outside with a flashlight, pointing it up toward my window. When they came to my door, I let them in. They searched the property, including the patch of forest behind the apartment building. They found nothing. No ladder, no footprints, nothing under the window, but some disturbed leaves and a few scrape marks on the siding, like someone had climbed. I asked how it was possible. That window was nearly 15 feet up. There were no balconies, no fire escape, no ledge to stand on. They said maybe it was a prank, or maybe someone used a ladder and took it with them. But I didn't hear anything before or after. No ladder scraping, no footsteps, no sound at all. They said to call if it happened again and left. That night, I didn't sleep. The next day, I bought a curtain for the window and a cheap security camera that I pointed right at the glass. For a while, things were fine, until 2 weeks later. It was around the same time, 12:45 a.m. I had just shut my laptop and was brushing my teeth when I heard a soft clack sound from the living room. I walked out slowly, heart already thudding. The curtain was slightly open. Scout was gone from the sill, and something had been written in the fog on the glass. Still watching, I stood frozen. There was no face this time, no person, but that message was written from the outside. I checked the camera. The recording showed about 10 minutes of normal static night view until it glitched. Right at 12:44, the feed froze for exactly 13 seconds. When it resumed, the message was there. No one seen, no motion detected. I moved out the following week. To this day, I don't know how he got up there or if he ever left. But sometimes I wake up in my new place and I swear I hear breathing against the window. This happened in the fall of 2014, back when I was still living with my parents in a Cimarron neighborhood in North Carolina. We were one of only 3 houses on a long, winding road that backed up into acres of thick woods. Our backyard stretched out for a bit before meeting the tree line, and beyond that, it was just forest. My parents both worked early mornings, so during the week, they were usually in bed by 9 p.m. I was 17 at the time, a senior in high school, and I'd stay up late doing homework or watching YouTube with my earbuds in. Our house had a big bay window in the kitchen that overlooked the backyard. It had no curtain, just a wide, open view of the trees. At night, if the lights were on inside, it basically turned into a mirror. You couldn't see anything outside, but I always felt like something out there could see me. That thought didn't bother me until one specific night. It was a Friday. Around 11:45 p.m., I was standing in the kitchen heating up leftover pizza. I had my earbuds in, music playing low, when I got this weird, prickly feeling on the back of my neck. The kind you get when someone's behind you, watching. I turned, and just for a second, I saw movement in the reflection of the window. I paused the music and slowly approached the glass, trying to focus my eyes past my own reflection into the backyard. At first, it looked empty, just trees. But then I saw him, a man, standing half behind a tree about 25 feet from the house. Just standing there, one hand against the trunk, the other hanging by his side, head tilted like he was studying the window. He didn't move, didn't flinch. I stepped back and turned off the kitchen light. With the interior dark, I could see outside more clearly now. He was still there, just barely lit by the moon, dressed in a dark jacket and pants. No flashlight, no phone, just staring. I didn't know what to do. My heart was hammering. I didn't want to wake my parents until I was sure, but I couldn't look away. So I grabbed my phone and took a photo through the glass. The flash went off, and that was the first time he moved. He didn't run. He just stepped back into the trees, completely swallowed by darkness. It was like he knew exactly how far he needed to go to disappear. I rushed upstairs and woke up my dad. He came down with a flashlight and a baseball bat. We went outside together, but the man was gone. No footprints, no broken branches, just the cold wind moving through the trees. I showed my dad the picture. It was blurry, but you could clearly see someone behind the tree. He made a report the next day, and for a while, things were quiet. Until it happened again. About 2 weeks later, I was home alone. My parents had gone out of town for a wedding, and I had stayed behind to work on a scholarship application. That night, it rained hard. At around 10:30 p.m., the power went out. I grabbed a flashlight and sat on the living room couch with Scout, our border collie. He was asleep next to me while I read on my tablet. Everything was quiet. No thunder, just the steady drumming of rain. until Scout sat up suddenly. Ears perked. He started growling, low at first, then louder. I followed his gaze toward the bay window. It was pitch black outside, but I could still make out shapes. And behind one of the same trees, a figure. Not moving, just there. I felt that same paralyzing fear. Like time had slowed. I grabbed my phone and took another picture with a flash. Nothing but a white burst and a blurry smear. When the light from the flash cleared, the man was gone. But the next morning, when the power came back on and I checked outside, there were fresh footprints in the mud, leading from the woods to the window, and then back again. I never saw him clearly, never saw his face, but he came back 3 times after that, always at night, always standing behind the same tree, just far enough away to make you question if he was really there. The police said they couldn't do much unless he tried to break in. So my dad installed motion lights, trail cams, even nailed boards over the lower parts of the window frame. And eventually, the man stopped coming. But I never forgot the way he stood behind that tree. Like he belonged there. Like he wasn't watching the house. He was watching me.